This is a special report from Daily Armenia, ＳiviLNeT's daily news digest. Here's all you need to know about Armenia and Azerbaijan finalizing their normalization negotiations. Azerbaijani Foreign Minister Ceyhun Bayramov announced yesterday that Yerevan and Baku had finalized the negotiations over the text of the normalization agreement between the two countries. The talks had been ongoing since October 2023. Armenia's foreign ministry confirmed this development later in the day. The agreement, which both sides referred to as a peace treaty, is expected to formally end the conflict between the nations, which has been ongoing since 1992. The negotiations concluded with the resolution of two key disputes. These were related to the withdrawal of European Union observers from the Armenia-Azerbaijan border and a cessation of legal proceedings between the two nations in international courts. Armenia had been reluctant to agree on these provisions for months, suggesting that they be dropped for much of last year, but has now agreed to accept them and move forward. Following his announcement, Bayramov reiterated that although the treaty is completed, Azerbaijan will not sign it until Armenia fulfills two preconditions. The first is for Armenia to amend its constitution, which Azerbaijan says allegedly includes territorial claims on Karabakh. While Armenian constitution itself does not mention Nagorno-Karabakh, it refers to the country's 1990 Declaration of Independence, which states that Nagorno-Karabakh should unite with Armenia. Azerbaijan views this as a legal claim on the region. The second precondition is for Armenia to formally abandon the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, Minsk Group, an international mechanism set up in the 1990s to mediate the resolution of the Karabakh conflict and largely inactive since Armenia's defeat in the 2020 Karabakh War. Azerbaijan's leadership insists that since the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict has ended with Azerbaijan's victory, no international body should remain to address it. Today, Armenia's foreign minister Ararat Mirzoyan emphasized Armenia's position regarding the OSCE Minsk Group, stating that once relations are normalized and the peace agreement is signed, the need for group's activities will cease. Until then, he highlighted ongoing destructive rhetoric from Azerbaijan. These preconditions, or demands, have been voiced by Azerbaijan throughout the negotiations, but they are not included in the text of the treaty. The demands were once again emphasized yesterday by Hikmet Hajiyev, an aide to Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev. Previously, Baku had mentioned two additional demands before signing the peace treaty. The first is the establishment of a transport route to connect mainland Azerbaijan with its Nakhchivan exclave, a solution Azerbaijan has pursued for decades. While Yerevan generally agrees to provide access, it has concerns about Baku's demands for the route, referred to by Azerbaijan as a corridor, to pass through Armenia without border controls by Armenian forces. The second demand was the resettlement of ethnic Azerbaijanis to areas they inhabited in modern-day Armenia during the Soviet era. Foreign Minister Ararat Mirzoyan clarified today that these two demands, like the earlier preconditions, are not included in the text of the treaty. Despite these official statements, it is highly likely that Azerbaijan will continue to demand these issues separately from the agreement. In a brief interaction with the press yesterday, Armenia's Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan confirmed that the negotiations over the peace agreement text had concluded and full agreement had been reached on the document. Most importantly, he announced that the provision on non-deployment of third country forces along the border, which pertains to the European Union's civilian observer mission, will only take effect once the treaty is signed, refuting speculation that Armenia might be withdrawing the observers with immediate effect. Pashinyan had previously stated he would be open to pulling observers from the border, but only in areas that have been demarcated. However, it is now unclear whether border delimitation will precede the signing of the treaty. The EU mission has been deployed along the Armenia-Azerbaijan border since February 2023, several months after Azerbaijan launched a major incursion into Armenia. Their mandate was recently extended for 2 more years. Azerbaijan's leadership has consistently expressed their discontent with the mission's presence, accusing it of political pressure and espionage, and threatening it with gunfire. Pashinyan noted that discussions in Armenia's parliament had led to the conclusion that the agreed provisions are a reasonable compromise. We should acknowledge that these provisions will only come into force once the peace agreement is signed, though the overall logic is that we still need to have further discussions on some nuances, he added. Pashinyan also addressed the precondition regarding Armenia's constitutional changes and clarified that Armenia sees no territorial claims in its constitution and emphasized that the issue of territorial claims toward Armenia is in fact present in Azerbaijan's constitution. Commenting on the normalization process, Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev said yesterday that his trust in Armenia is close to zero, emphasizing that Baku requires official documents, not just words. He reiterated Azerbaijan's demand for Armenia to amend its constitution to remove any territorial claims on Azerbaijan and once again called for the dissolution of the Minsk Group. Armenia's former foreign minister, Vardan Askanyan, strongly criticized the agreement, highlighting its lack of provisions regarding Azerbaijan's continued occupation of Armenian sovereign territories. He pointed out that the agreement fails to address the release of Armenian prisoners or acknowledge the plight of Nagorno-Karabakh's forcibly displaced Armenian population and their right to return. Tigran Grigoryan of the Yerevan-based Regional Center for Democracy and Security analyzed the demand for constitutional changes, noting that Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan has framed the move as part of Armenia's broader national identity shift rather than a concession to Azerbaijan. Although the government is committed to this change, the process will be time-consuming and face significant public resistance. A new constitution is unlikely to be finalized before the 2026 parliamentary elections, and a referendum could be unpopular, particularly since many will view it as imposed by Azerbaijan. The government may try to boost turnout by holding the referendum alongside elections, but convincing the public will be challenging. Despite the treaty's progress, disagreements over critical issues like transport routes and economic unblocking remain unresolved. Political scientist Narek Sukiasyan, an expert at the Yerevan Center for Civilizational and Cultural Studies, expressed strong criticism over the treaty. He noted that Armenia had already agreed to several key concessions, but has made no progress on negotiating the release of Armenian prisoners from Azerbaijan, has backed away from demanding international guarantees, and has not achieved significant progress in normalization with Turkey. Despite the distance remaining toward full peace, countries like Germany and France, as well as regional neighbors Georgia and Iran, have welcomed the progress in Armenia-Azerbaijan normalization, viewing it as a crucial step towards ending hostilities in the South Caucasus. Stay with CivilNet as the story continues to develop.